Hello, you are watching Forced Skirmishes 3 and 4 of my TearRing Saga, Champions of Use in a Low Turn Count playthrough. Both of these skirmishes take place in a location called the Aerial Caves, up in the Aerial Mountains, and they are thus both mountain maps. The objective of these maps is to open all of the treasure chests on the map, which is why we gave both Holmes and Junie Mountaineer, in addition to giving it to Plum. Just like the last couple of skirmishes, there are big obstacles to getting the absolute lowest turn count on this first skirmish. Even beyond the very specific deployment slots we would need to make sure that Junie can both reach the furthest chest in the minimum turn count while also being danced by Plum with her relatively low movement. We are also faced here with the tight corridors on a movement-based map problem. If any enemies at all spawn in the upper right room of this map, we are basically locked out of being able to complete it in the absolute lowest turn count, which is 3. That obviously is down to the fact that Junie is absolutely garbage in combat and has no possible way of removing enemies in front of her within a single turn. And because she's so far ahead of the others, and we have to also dance Holmes, it's almost impossible to get anyone up there to remove an enemy from in front of her. So instead of trying to pull that off, we're going with the slower but much more reliable strategy of dancing Vega forward on turn 1 to start dealing with the powerful enemies on this map. As a quick side note, we're trying to get Narron up to level 16 still for Canto, so Martel is going to trade off her own leather shield in order to prevent this Entombed from being manipulated into attacking her on this enemy phase, letting us use Narron to kill it instead. Looking around the map, you will probably notice that there are a lot of treasure chests here that appear to have already been opened. The reason for that is that this map and the next one can be repeated over and over as much as you like, and on each playthrough the map, a different pair of treasure chests are available for opening. Fortunately for reliability here, the treasure chests that are active are not randomized. On this forced playthrough of this skirmish, the same 2 treasure chests will always be the targets required to clear it, and on subsequent clears, it rotates the treasure chests in a 5-attempt pattern, repeating with this setup on the 6th attempt. What does vary on each attempt is the treasure inside each treasure chest. Each treasure chest has its own drop table, so you're stuck with the drop tables from these 2 specific chests if you're LTCing and not repeating skirmishes. The contents of each chest is determined when you open it, not at the start of the map. So it is possible to use the save staff or save states to rig the rare items out of them, but I'm obviously not going to be doing any of that, because the items in here don't actually make all that much of a difference to me. The most troublesome enemies on this map are the Barbarians, which are a new enemy type. These guys have extremely high HP, as well as pretty good defense. That much was adequately demonstrated by Vega on the first enemy phase, failing to 1-round KO either of them, and then again just now with Holmes not managing to get a 1-round KO even with a full quadruple attack from the Chukonu. These Barbarians are the main reason why it's so scary for Junie to go through here, because the ones in the main room spawn in with silver axes, which allows them to one-hit KO her easily. This is the reason why Junie pulled out a miracle charm at the start of this chapter, just in case she had to see combat against one or more of these guys. Even with the Silver Axe Barbarians cleared out, however, this is still a pretty scary enemy phase, because we had to leave the Witch and the Harpy alive there. And the Barbarian that Holmes failed to kill is quite capable of doubling him. Thankfully though, he only has an iron axe and not a silver axe, which would have easily 2-hit KO'd Holmes. So at this point I have to check whether Junie is going to be able to reach the chest by the end of turn 4 if she attacks to get this entombed out of the way. And fortunately she can, so this run is not a reset. Despite what I said earlier about needing no enemies to spawn in this upper right area, Junie is just about able to one-round KO this entombed because of how terrible entombed stats are. She does unfortunately risk death here because she got attacked last turn and her defense is really terrible. But I decide to go for it anyway because I don't want to have to reset again to get a decent deployment at the start of this map. We see here one of the flaws of Narron compared to Raffen in action, because he is unable to reach the witch here with any of his 2-ranged options on account of him not being able to use lancers indoors, so that kind of sucks. And now we need to make sure that at least the upper 2 enemies here are dead before enemy phase, so that they do not chase Junie down and finish her off, or at least waste her miracle charm. Because the chest Holmes is going for is much closer than Junie's one, he can chip in here to help finish off the enemies that threaten her, without losing any turns. And we have a physics staff available to get Plum back up to safe levels of HP. Now, there is a witch here who could theoretically warp over and kill Junie, but this is precluded by the AI of witches in this game. If a witch has an enemy already within her attack range, she will not warp at all, which means that Junie is quite safe and the witch is forced to attack one of our units who's perfectly capable of surviving. Now, Narron is once again caught short on range here and unable to reach the witch to attack her, so we attempt to get a second Sing proc on him in this map, which obviously doesn't work out, but that's okay, it was worth the attempt to get him over for some experience. Instead of that, we're going to have Vega kill off the witch, and then get danced by Plum for a little bit of experience on her. If I'd been thinking a bit more about the long-term goals of this run, I probably would have had Lyria run up and get danced by Plum instead, so that she would get 2 songs out of this, but luckily it doesn't end up mattering too much. So, Junie picked up an estoc from her chest, and Holmes is about to grab a money bag from the second chest, and picking up those treasures completes the map in 4 turns. These 2 skirmishes are the first time in the game where 2 maps happen consecutively without sending you back out to the world map in between. The unfortunate downside of this from these videos' perspective is that I have to go through into the intro of the next map before I can save, and then loading that save forces us to re-watch the intro of the map. This is a bit of a downside to my video formatting, but I've decided that in the interests of showing absolutely everything, it's just what we're going to do, and hopefully it's not too much of a bother. So now let's move on to Skirmish 4, and once again it would be possible to save a turn on this map if the deployment just goes exactly your way. This map would require a Sing rig in order to get that to happen though, because of where the deployment slots are. The nearest deployment slot to the upper treasure chest is 1 tile over 3 moves away for either Junie or Holmes, and that means that we have to find a way to refresh that unit twice. To do this, we would have to have Plum dance on turn 1, and then have her dance Lyria after them in order to get a Sing refresh on turn 2. And that is quite a stretch, because it also involves both of those units being deployed exactly where we want them. That clear also relies on the second thief being able to walk to the nearer treasure chest in 2 moves without any refreshing at all. So, all in all, pushing for a 2-turn on this skirmish is really hard. Now, there are still a couple of scary enemies between us and the upper treasure chest, and one of those is a Draco zombie, which I believe is the first Draco zombie we fight in this game. Draco zombies have the same fierce breath as the Guardian dragons, which makes them somewhat scary to fight, but fortunately we were able to eliminate this one with Vega's Shram before it had any chance of one-hit KOing Junie. We're able to see here that Lyria now has 2 range on her singing due to reaching level 5 in the last skirmish. This is an important milestone for her, though not the benchmark that we are targeting, so we are still going to be grinding as much singing as possible for the next few maps. Junie is targeted on this enemy phase by the Arch-Ogre, who was still alive, but remember that she is still holding on to the Miracle Charm from last chapter, so even if he got a low % crit on her, she still would have survived to move on. We're going to bring Narron up to fight that Arch-Ogre, because he is still the best user of the experience points here. Additionally, he's going to do his best to get the kill with the Iron Sword that he's holding, which is in fact the critical Iron Sword from back in Chapter 1. This has fallen quite a long way behind Martel's crit Iron Lance, but it's still an important boost to Narron's strength when he uses it. With the Arch-Ogre finally dying, all of the threatening enemies on this map are now dead. There are still quite a few enemies on this map, but their placement is designed to interfere with people trying to get the chests on the far side of the map on later clears, and thus they're not at all relevant to this forced battle. One interesting thing about these skirmishes is that one of the enemies that can spawn in is a mage holding an Earthquake Tome. And the Earthquake Tome is capable of targeting our entire army in a single attack. Fortunately for us, it can only be used on turns that are divisible by 5, which means that even on a casual run, it's pretty unlikely to cause any harm to your army, and we're going to be clearing it before it could even possibly be used. But it's an interesting thing to point out, and we are actually going to be getting a tome that's pretty similar to it later on in the game. With all that said, all we've got to do now is a little bit of grinding out with Lyria before Junie and Holmes pick up the 2 treasure chests and complete the map in 3 turns. Holmes's chest is actually capable of dropping an Area of Effect tome similar to the Black Hole tome that we encountered back in Chapter 5, but that is a really rare drop, so there's no real point in going for it. Anyway, that's all for this video, and I will see you next time for an actual chapter for the first time in quite a while. See you then.